Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of Ambient Talkie, a show where we dive into some weird and wacky equipment and call it whatever you want music. I'm Andy from Two Round Robins, and I hope you're ready for a very basic dive into Plinky. So right at the beginning of my so-called synth journey, Plinky was an elusive machine. I saw this lovely looking desktop synth on Loopop's channel and immediately went hunting for one. However, due to the pesky chip shortages, the only thing that you could do then is go on a waiting list. So I was looking at Reverb, but soon figured out I'd need a second mortgage just to afford the hefty price tag on a second-hand unit. However, Plinky made a return as version 3 and is now fully open source device which you can build by buying kits or building one yourself following a build guide. But I was completely unaware of this and kind of forgot about Plinky until I saw a post by a person from SoundNest, which is a store on Etsy, which offered some pre-built units, or a clone if you will. A week later, it was at my door, functionally totally the same as the original, and it looks pretty similar too, the difference here being that there's an I here at the title instead of a Y. And the owner of the SoundNest was kind enough to engrave this logo of Pixie Waves at the bottom, which is a little project that I'm currently working on. So if you don't want to bother by building one yourselves, you can do it by just checking out SoundNest on Etsy or dropping them a DM on Instagram and asking for any pre-made builds. But without further ado, let's just go into Plinky. So what exactly is a Plinky? To put it simply, it's an 8-voice synth that can equally work as a desktop synth or a 24 HP Eurorack module. It holds a rather unique look with loads of symbols that are printed on the touch surface, a lovely little screen on top, 2 rotary knobs for additional control, and the main rotary knob for more stuff, I guess. It also includes Eurorack inputs on this side and outputs on this side, which are basically meant to connect to your modular system. We won't touch upon this in this video as I'm still testing it out when it comes to connecting it to my Seat Lombard gear. More on that in the future, I'm quite sure. But what I found particularly interesting is the unique way of connecting audio and I do apologize, that was Pixie, my editor. So going back, what I found unique is the connection of the audio inputs and outputs when it comes to connecting. You can do this on the top of the unit as well as on the bottom of the unit. The same can be said when it comes to the electricity or connecting of your power. However, unfortunately, it's only connectable via the dreadful USB micro or micro USB. Apart, if you have a Eurorack module, there's also a way to connect it to your Eurorack power supply that's on the bottom here. But more or less, I think that you're probably far more interested in how this thing sounds. So without further ado, here is Plinky. So what you're hearing now is Plinky's own internal synth. And I think this sounds absolutely beautiful. You can easily change the shape of the synth by changing the shape. So there's a secondary row here, which basically lets you press different symbols here where you can change it. So if we change the if we change the shape, there's a couple of shapes. I think it fosters some sawtooth waves as well as pulse wave modulation. So there are a couple of different shapes that you can try. However, you did see that I had to use some key combos to change the sound. So let's talk a bit about this. Looking at Plinky, it can be quite overwhelming, but spending a bit more time with it, you'll soon realize that its creator Alex even designed a rather intuitive layout. Basically, as I see it, you have two modes. One of the modes being that you play the Plinky. And this is basically based on a scale that you can easily change or predefine it as you will. And basically, all of these touch surfaces become a way to make sound on your Plinky. However, if you hold one of the secondary knobs here at the bottom row, you can easily change stuff. So for example, if we want to change the shape like we did before, I hold down this left button, and as you can see, this corresponds to whatever it's written on the top here. So let's say, for example, if we want shape, we can basically change it by moving our fingers via this arrow here, or you can do this by changing the rotary knob here, which I find far better, just because it's far more detailed when it comes to what you want, and by pressing it you can go to the default mode here. You can do the same with the bottom additional arguments here by pressing the right key here. And then let's say, for example, if we want to add a bit of noise to our little signal, we can do this just by adding a bit of noise. So you can quite easily see that it has a couple of rows, which are rather logical. So think of them as certain group elements in order to shape your sound or make your Plinky behave in a certain way. So for example, on the top row here, we can see it states sound, and then we can change the shape, we can add distortion, we can change the pitch, the octave, the glide from one note to the other, and by the bottom one here we can also add noise, we can add resonance, we can change the degree, the scale, etc, etc. And just by following these rows here, you can see that we have sound, we have envelope where you can change your envelope, we have the effects section where you can add delay and reverb, where you can change this delay and reverb and so on. And you can also use a sequencer or an ARP here. So yeah, Plinky also has a sequencer and ARP. So for example, if we want to listen to this ARP or change it, I'll also add latch. You can see here that it's changing. However, just to see it a bit better, or just to hear it a bit better, I'm gonna change the envelope. And there we go. We have a lovely arpeggio, which you can change by pressing, let's say, the clock division, or this is the rate, sorry, the sampler. I miscalculated. Now let's change the arp octave as well. So that's quite lovely. And of course, with this, you can also change the shape. So that's quite lovely, I think. And also let's try to change the order. And that becomes quite interesting on its own. But Plinky is not just the internal synth, it also has a sampler. So now that we have our norms here hooked up to Plinky, we can try and sample something. So firstly, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to a free preset. So let's say, for example, I'm gonna take the 12th preset, and I can choose the slot of the sample here. So for example, I want to change the sample 6, and what I can do is basically just go here, press it, I'm gonna edit it, and now I'm gonna erase this particular sample. And in the meantime, while this is erasing, I can go to, and let's say, for example, we can use Flora here as our main input into the Plinky. So by pressing Flora, we can go here. Let's just open up the levels. And as you can hear, Plinky is receiving signals. Now with the knob A, we can quite easily make our recording signal the way we want to, so we level it accordingly. Let's say we want to record this. No problem, we can just press record. It's recording now. And by pressing the row or the column here, it automatically makes a trim point, which is better for, let's say, later when we are editing the sample. We can just use this trim here and make something of our own. Now, what you'll see is that Plinky has around 8, well, exactly 8 sample slots that you can use and you can store. You can overdub, record, whatever. Well, I don't think you can overdub, but you can record over and make new samples. And because we already went to the preset at the beginning, this basically stated that we could, that it's going to be stored on that particular sample slot on that particular level or particular preset. So there we go. We have it. And let's just turn down our norms here and listen to our sample. And as you can see, these were those stream heads that we already put in. So for example, if we want to change the position of the trim slot, we can just move this accordingly, or you can just use the main knob to do that. And I think this is a preferable way, at least for me. So, you know, this now becomes the boring part of creating something, because, you know, there's nothing more dubious or monotone than just making your samples line up the way you want it. So I won't bore you with this. I'll just basically, let's see. Okay, it's okay, whatever. Just for the sake of this little experiment that we're creating. Okay, so now we have it, we're fine. And what we can do is just go to our preset here. And this is basically our little sample. Now, a cool thing here is that Plinky has a granular synthesis, or has a granular engine that we can use. So let's try this. So this is our sampler row here, and we can go to, let's say, time stretch. And let's say just move this really slow down. And then let's say for the grain size, we can just make it a tad bigger. And now, if we play, far more ambient. And you know what? Let's just, for the sake of it, let's change this display speed to 50%. There we go. So half speed, best speed. And it sounds absolutely lovely. I really dig the granular engine on Plinky. As I don't know, I just like how it does stuff with sound. Okay, cool. So let's say we have this. Now, you can also change stuff that was meant for the main synth engine. Now, apart from shape, we can add, let's say, we can add noise. There we go. Always love a bit of noise. And let's say, let's change the envelope. So I'm gonna add a bit more attack. And more importantly, I'm gonna add, well, not this release, but this release. So the release one to a bit more. That's far better. And just for the sake of it, let's just put a bit less of this noise. Where are we? Come on. Okay, noise. Let's just very, very small amount. And what I'm gonna do is also I'm gonna go to the synth level and I'm gonna boost it up a bit. And let's see. And that sounds quite nice. I don't know what those clicks were, to be honest. Maybe they're in the sample, maybe it's just how the granular engine works. But, you know, it's not a problem a lot, at least for me. But, yeah. Okay, one more thing that we can try to do is assign these knobs to different things. So, for example, you can assign all of these symbols to different stuff that's here, basically doing little LFOs. So for example, if we want to assign the time stretch here to the A knob here, let's just push this LFO to 100 here. And now we can also go reverse. And this becomes very, very interesting, very, very nice, quite quickly. Now another thing that we can do is, let's use the grain size for knob number 2, basically doing the same thing. So let's just move it to, so it's a bit flimsy as you can see with the touchpads here. So I'm always using this rotary knob for far better. And this is shorter sample grains and longer ones. And that's quite lovely. Let's just reverse it. And what else we can do is that it's not only these that are signable or these. Let's say, for example, if we're gonna use shimmer. Okay, so I'm gonna use shimmer here. And I'm gonna add a bit of shimmering. And I'm gonna use the touch sensitivity, so how much pressure it adds. And I'm gonna go to, I don't know, 100. So the more I press, the more shimmer we get, which is another lovely layer of texture. So yeah, that's quite lovely. So let's try to add a bit of latch. So the thing is, when you get Plinky, you have to calibrate it, and you have to be really careful with calibration. As you can see, I'm having a bit of difficulties when it comes to touchpads here. Although they are great to play and to do stuff with it, I think I need to calibrate this thing once again, just to make extra sure that my fingers are right on the touchpads and there are no possible ways of errors. But however, those are little things that come and, you know, might cause a bit of problems for you. But for me, it's more than doable. So yeah, there you go. A rather basic overview of the wonderful world that Plinky Synth has to offer. We were just touching the surface within this video, so if you want to go and get one or already have one and want to know a bit more, I'll link a couple of videos in the description, as well as the very good documentation that the official site offers. So happy exploring. And speaking of happiness, I'm quite happy with Plinky, as its portable size and the overall sound of the granular engine makes it a great companion to any ambient sessions in the future. I'll definitely explore more of it with the integration of my modular gear, as well as patterns, presets and whatnot. So if you like this type of video and want to support me, I have a Patreon where I upload sample libraries and episodes well ahead of its release here on YouTube. So be sure to check that out. Also, if you want to connect with me, I have a Discord link, and you can always give a follow and DM me on Instagram, as well as the usual sub and the usual YouTube shtick. But most importantly, have a great rest of your evening, morning or afternoon, whenever you might be watching this, and do take care.